I stood frozen in the hallway of my own home, staring in disbelief at the lock on my bedroom door that had been changed while I was at work. My clothes, shoes, and personal belongings were piled haphazardly in the small guest bedroom across the hall. The sound of my brother Jake's laughter drifted from my master bedroom, along with my parents' animated voices. When I pushed open the door, I found them arranging Jake's things in the space I had lovingly renovated over the past year. Mom looked up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Not your house." "Never was," she said casually, as if telling me we were out of milk. I felt my knees weaken as the betrayal hit me like a physical blow. For 3 years, I had been paying the mortgage to save them from foreclosure after Dad lost his job, sacrificing my savings and dreams to keep my family afloat. "What do you mean this isn't my house?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been paying the mortgage for 3 years. My father stepped forward, crossing his arms over his chest. "We let you help out during our rough patch, Cassandra. That doesn't make it your house." I'm Cassandra Matthews, 32 years old, and a project manager at TechVision, one of the fastest-growing software companies in Seattle. 3 years ago, when I got the panicked call from my mother saying they were 3 months behind on payments and facing foreclosure, I didn't hesitate. After Dad lost his management position at 57, their savings quickly dwindled. I offered to buy the house from them, allowing them to stay rent-free until they got back on their feet. "We had an agreement," I said, pulling out my phone to show them the payment records. "I bought this house from you. I have 3 years of mortgage payments to prove it." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "We appreciate the help, sweetheart, but this has always been our family home." Jake emerged from my bathroom, my expensive organic towels draped around his shoulders. At 28, my brother had never held a job for longer than 8 months. His boyish grin that charmed everyone had lost its effect on me years ago. "Hey sis," he said with a smirk. "Thanks for the upgrade. The water pressure in this shower is amazing." "Jake lost his apartment," Mom explained, patting his arm affectionately. "He needs a comfortable space to regroup." "And the guest room isn't comfortable enough?" I asked, my voice rising. "The one I already generously said he could use temporarily." "Jake has back problems," Dad interjected. "The master has better support for his condition." I almost laughed. "Back problems? Since when?" "Don't be selfish," Cassandra, Mom scolded. "You've always had everything handed to you. Your brother needs our support right now." The irony of her statement was breathtaking. Throughout our childhood, Jake was the golden child who could do no wrong. When I made honor roll, they barely noticed. When Jake managed to pass with C's, they threw him a celebration dinner. My academic scholarships were expected. His making the basketball team was exceptional. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I need to see the paperwork from when I bought the house." My parents exchanged glances. "We should discuss this later," Dad said. "Jake needs to get settled." The next morning I left for work early, stopping by my neighbor Martha's house. She had lived next door for 20 years and had brought me a housewarming gift when I officially moved in 3 years ago, even though I'd grown up in the house. "Martha," I said carefully, after accepting a cup of coffee, "when did my parents tell you they sold the house to me?" Martha looked confused. "Sold it to you? They never mentioned that. They said you were helping manage it while they maintained ownership." "Your father specifically told my husband that they'd never give up their family home, but that you were being a good daughter by handling the administrative side." I felt a chill run through me. This was worse than I thought. That evening I came home determined to have a rational conversation with my parents. I found them in the kitchen with Jake, laughing over dinner. They hadn't set a place for me. "We need to talk about the house situation," I said, remaining standing. "There's no situation to discuss," Dad said firmly. "This is our house. You've been helping with payments, and we're grateful." "Helping with payments? I've been paying the entire mortgage, the property taxes, and the insurance for 3 years. I pulled out the folder of bank statements I'd printed at work. "And I have the agreement we signed." Mom sighed dramatically. "Must you always be so technical, Cassandra? This is family, not business." "It's both," I insisted. "You were about to lose this house. I stepped in and purchased it from you." Jake rolled his eyes. Classic Cassandra, always keeping score. "I'm not keeping score, Jake. I'm stating facts." "You owe us," Mom said suddenly, her eyes narrowing. "We raised you, put you through school. This is the least you could do in return." I blinked in surprise. "I don't owe you for raising me. That was your choice as parents." "Such disrespect," Dad muttered. Jake leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smirk. "The master bedroom suits me better anyway. My back can't handle those cheap guest room mattresses. I turned to him. You mean the brand new memory foam mattress I just bought last month for the guest room? Whatever. It's garbage compared to your king size, Jake retorted. Something in me snapped. I marched to my former bedroom and pushed open the door. The sight that greeted me made my stomach drop. My beautiful new bedding was stained and rumpled. In the corner, Jake's untrained bulldog puppy had chewed through one of my decorative pillows, stuffing strewn across the floor. What happened to my things? I demanded. Jake appeared behind me. Rocky gets anxious in new places. He'll settle down. You brought a dog without asking me. I'm allergic, Jake. It's not all about you, Cassandra, he replied. Rocky is like my therapy animal. That night, I called my best friend Lisa in tears. They've completely gaslit you, Lisa said, after I explained everything. You need to check the actual property records at the county clerk's office. I have the agreement we signed, I said. But was it officially filed? Did you get the deed transferred to your name? A sinking feeling washed over me. In my rush to save my parents from homelessness, had I missed a crucial step? Over the next week, things escalated. Small items began disappearing from my temporary room in what used to be the guest bedroom. My favorite watch, a pair of earrings cash from my wallet. When I mentioned it, my mother suggested I was becoming paranoid. I discreetly installed a small security camera on my bookshelf. 2 days later, I had undeniable video evidence of Jake entering my room while I was at work, rummaging through my belongings and pocketing several items. I confronted him that evening, showing him the footage on my phone. You're spying on me now, he exploded. In my own house? This is my house, Jake. And you're stealing from me. My parents rushed in at the commotion. What's all this about? Dad demanded. I turned my phone to show them the video. Jake has been stealing my things. Instead of addressing Jake's theft, my mother zeroed in on the camera. You've been recording in our home without permission. That's a violation of our privacy. Your privacy in my house. My father's face darkened. About that, Cassandra, there's something you should know. He exchanged a look with my mother before continuing. We never actually transferred the deed to your name. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. What are you talking about? The agreement you signed, Mom explained almost smugly. It was for you to make payments on our behalf, not for actual ownership transfer. We maintained the deed in our names. That's not what we agreed to, I stammered. You took my money under false pretenses for 3 years. We took your help as any loving child would provide to their parents, Dad corrected. The fact that you're turning this into a business transaction shows your true character. Jake smirked from behind them. Guess it's not your house after all, sis. Never was. The next morning, I called in sick to work and went straight to the county records office. My hands trembled as I requested the property records for my address. The clerk returned with the information that confirmed my worst fears. The house was still in my parents' names. There had never been a transfer. From there, I went directly to a real estate attorney's office. The gravity of the situation became clear as I explained everything to Angela Davis, a sharp-eyed lawyer in her 50s. Based on what you're describing, this could constitute fraud, she said, reviewing the agreement I'd brought. This document does indicate a sale, but without the deed transfer, it's complicated. They've taken nearly $200,000 from me over 3 years, I said, my voice breaking. All my savings went into that house. Do you have documentation of all the payments? I nodded, sliding over the folder of bank statements. And what about property tax payments, insurance? I've paid everything I confirmed. I have records of all of it. Angela studied me thoughtfully. This will get messy, Cassandra. Are you prepared for what a legal battle with your family might mean? The question hit me hard. Despite everything, these were my parents. And Jake, for all his faults, was my brother. Could I really take them to court? I left the attorney's office with a lot to think about, promising to call her once I'd made a decision. That evening, my Aunt Susan was visiting for dinner. I hadn't planned to join them, but I heard my name mentioned as I passed the dining room. Cassandra has been such a help with the house payments, Mom was saying. It's allowing us to finally take that Alaskan cruise next month. I froze in the hallway. That's wonderful, Aunt Susan replied. You two deserve a vacation after everything you've been through. And we're upgrading to the balcony suite, Dad added proudly. Might as well enjoy ourselves. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were using my mortgage payments to fund a luxury cruise while claiming they couldn't afford to repay me or properly transfer the house. I entered the dining room, making my presence known. The conversation instantly shifted. Cassandra, come join us, Mom said brightly. Susan brought her famous apple pie. I remained standing. I just heard you discussing your upcoming cruise, the one you're paying for with my mortgage money. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Don't be dramatic, Dad finally said. We've been saving for this trip for years. Really? While telling me you couldn't even afford groceries some months, while I paid for a new water heater last winter and roof repairs in the spring, Jake, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. Oh, by the way, I'm having some friends move in next week. I turned to him in disbelief. Excuse me. Just temporarily, he shrugged. Trent and Steve lost their lease. They need a place for a couple months. Absolutely not, I said firmly. This house is already overcrowded. It's not up to you, Mom interjected. We've already told them it's fine. I pulled out my phone and pulled up the photos I'd taken at the county records office that morning. I visited the county clerk today. I know you never transferred the deed to me despite taking my money for 3 years. For the first time, my parents looked uncomfortable. I want proper transfer of the deed by the end of the week, or I want every penny I've paid returned to me, I stated. Otherwise, I'll be pursuing legal action. Legal action, Mom scoffed, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Against your own parents. For what accepting your help? For fraud, I replied calmly. For taking nearly $200,000 from me under false pretenses. You would tear this family apart over money, Dad asked incredulously. I'm not the one who tore this family apart, I said. You did that when you decided to steal from your daughter. As I turned to leave the room, Aunt Susan cleared her throat. Diane Paul, is this true? Did you take Cassandra's money without transferring the house? My parents began speaking over each other with justifications and excuses. She always was difficult, Mom said, even as a child. Remember when she refused to give up her college savings to help Jake start his business? I froze. My college savings, what are you talking about? Mom immediately looked like she'd said too much. Dad jumped in quickly. Your mother misspoke. She meant your graduation money. No, I said, slowly, memories resurfacing. You told me my college fund was lost in a bad investment. That's why I had to take out student loans. Aunt Susan looked increasingly uncomfortable. I think I should go. After she left, I confronted my parents directly. What happened to my college fund? After several minutes of denial, the truth finally emerged. The money my grandparents had set aside for my education had been borrowed by my parents to fund Jake's first failed business venture 8 years ago. A smoothie shop that closed within 6 months. It was an investment in your brother's future, Dad justified. And what about my future? I demanded. You were always the responsible one, Mom said, as if that explained everything. We knew you'd figure it out. I went to bed that night with my head spinning. Not only had my parents defrauded me of the house payments, but they had also taken my college fund years earlier. The pattern of favoring Jake at my expense wasn't new. It had been happening my entire life. The next morning, I packed enough clothes for a week and moved temporarily to Lisa's apartment. I needed space to think clearly without the constant manipulation and gaslighting from my family. You can stay as long as you need, Lisa assured me, helping me bring my suitcases into her spare room. Have you decided what you're going to do? I sank onto the edge of the bed. I don't know. Taking my own parents to court feels wrong, but what they've done is worse. They stole from you, Cass, repeatedly. This isn't about family loyalty anymore. The calls started that afternoon. First Mom, then Dad, then Jake, all with variations of the same message: I was overreacting, being selfish, tearing the family apart. Each call ended with a request for more money for one expense or another. The property taxes are due, Dad said during his third call. You know we can't afford them on our own. The house is in your name, I reminded him. According to you, it's your responsibility. After everything we've done for you, he responded, his voice hardening. I hung up and blocked their numbers, needing a break from the constant emotional assault. 3 days into my stay with Lisa, my colleague Trevor sent me a text with an attached photo. Isn't this your house? Looks like quite a party. The picture showed my front yard littered with cars and people spilling out onto the porch with red cups in hand. Music must have been blaring, judging by the neighbors standing at the property line with annoyed expressions. I drove over immediately, finding my worst fears confirmed. Jake had thrown a massive party in my absence. The house was trashed. The living room furniture had been rearranged with beer spills soaking into the carpet I had just replaced last year. In the kitchen, countertops were sticky with spilled alcohol, and someone had apparently tried to cook late-night snacks, leaving burnt pans and food debris everywhere. I found Jake passed out on my bed upstairs, surrounded by empty bottles. Two strangers I didn't recognize were sleeping on my floor. "Get up!" I shouted, pulling the comforter off him. "Get these people out of my house now." Jake groaned and squinted at me. "Chill out, it was just a small get-together." A small get-together. The entire house is destroyed. I was so angry I could barely speak. "Where are Mom and Dad?" "They went to visit Aunt Susan for the weekend," he mumbled. "Said I could have a few friends over." It took 3 hours to get everyone out and assess the damage. My home office had been used as some kind of makeshift bar with sticky residue covering my desk and computer equipment. Worst of all, a shelf of family photos had been knocked over, breaking frames and damaging irreplaceable pictures, including the last photo taken of my grandparents before they passed away. When my parents returned that evening, they were more concerned about my overreaction than Jake's behavior. "Young people need to blow off steam," Mom said dismissively. "It's just stuff, Cassandra. It can be replaced." "Not everything can be replaced," I said, holding up the damaged photo of my grandparents. "And it's not just stuff. It's my stuff in my house that I pay for." "Here we go again," Dad sighed. "Back to whose house it is." The stress began affecting my work performance. I missed deadlines and found it hard to concentrate during meetings. My boss Melanie called me into her office after I zoned out during an important client presentation. "Is everything okay, Cassandra?" she asked with genuine concern. "This isn't like you." I hesitated before explaining the situation. Melanie listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "Take the time you need to sort this out," she said finally. "And by the way, the director position is opening up next month. You've been on the shortlist, but I need you focused if you're going to be considered." The promotion I'd been working toward for 2 years was finally within reach, but my family drama was jeopardizing it. Something had to give. The next day, my parents showed up at my office unannounced. I was in a meeting when the receptionist called to say my parents were causing a scene in the lobby, refusing to leave until they spoke to me. Red-faced with embarrassment, I excused myself and hurried to the lobby where my parents were loudly complaining to anyone who would listen about their ungrateful daughter. "What are you doing here?" I hissed, pulling them toward the exit. "You blocked our calls," Mom said accusingly. "We need to discuss the property tax bill." "This is my workplace," I said through gritted teeth. "You can't just show up here." "We wouldn't have to if you weren't being so selfish," Dad retorted loud enough for several of my colleagues to hear. "After everything we've sacrificed for you," I managed to get them outside before more damage could be done, but the humiliation lingered. Returning to my desk, I could feel curious stares following me. That night, Jake took my car without permission. I had forgotten to take my spare key when I moved to Lisa's, and he found it in my drawer. At 2 in the morning, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Cassandra Matthews?" a male voice asked. "Yes, who is this?" "Officer Daniels with Seattle PD. Your brother has been in an accident with your vehicle. No serious injuries, but there is significant damage to the car." My heart sank. "Was anyone else hurt?" "No, ma'am. He struck a parked vehicle. I should inform you that he's being processed for driving under the influence." The hits just kept coming. Not only was my car seriously damaged, but I now had to deal with the insurance implications of Jake's DUI while driving my vehicle. When I arrived at the police station, Jake was belligerent. "Took you long enough. They won't release me without bail." "I'm not here to bail you out," I said coldly. "I'm here to make sure the police report correctly identifies you as taking my car without permission." His smug expression faltered. "You wouldn't." "I absolutely would. You stole my car, Jake. Then you drove it drunk and crashed it. Actions have consequences." For the first time, he looked genuinely worried. "Mom and Dad will never forgive you if you press charges." I'm starting to think their forgiveness isn't worth much. As I was leaving the station, my phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Tara. "Just heard about your mental breakdown from Aunt Diane. If you need to talk, I'm here. No one believes you're actually unstable." I stared at the message in confusion before calling Tara directly. "What mental breakdown?" I asked when she answered. "Oh," she sounded uncomfortable. "Your mom has been telling everyone you're going through some kind of psychological episode. Something about paranoid delusions about the house ownership and making up stories about them stealing from you." The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Not only had my parents stolen my money and my house, but they were now actively trying to discredit me to the entire family by questioning my mental stability. "She said they're trying to protect you by managing your money until you're better," Tara continued hesitantly. I felt sick to my stomach. "None of that is true, Tara. They've been taking my money for years under false pretenses. I have proof." There was a pause before she responded. I had a feeling something wasn't right about their story. It didn't sound like you at all. It was time to stop hoping my parents would do the right thing. Their pattern of betrayal was too consistent, too calculated to be anything but intentional. With a heavy heart, I made the decision to pursue legal action. The next morning, I scheduled appointments with both Angela Davis, the attorney, and Morgan Whitaker, a financial advisor recommended by Melanie. I needed a comprehensive strategy to untangle myself from this toxic situation. Based on the documentation you've provided, we have a strong case for fraudulent misrepresentation, Angela explained during our meeting. Your parents took money from you under the explicit agreement that you were purchasing the home, but they never completed the legal transfer of ownership. What's my best course of action? I asked. We'll start with a formal demand letter stating the facts of the case and requesting either full repayment of all funds with interest or immediate transfer of the deed to your name, Angela said. This gives them one last chance to resolve this without court intervention. Morgan, the financial advisor, had more sobering news after reviewing my financial records. You've invested a significant portion of your savings into this property, he noted. Beyond the mortgage payments, you've put money into repairs, renovations, and upkeep. We're looking at close to $250,000 over the past 3 years. The number made me feel physically ill. That's almost all of my savings. The good news is that the current market value of the home has increased, Morgan continued. If you gain legal ownership, your investment hasn't been lost. But you need to protect yourself from further financial entanglement immediately. Following their advice, I established new bank accounts at a different institution, ensuring my parents had no access to my finances. I collected all documentation of house-related payments, communications about the purchase agreement, and records of renovations and repairs I'd funded. Armed with this information, Angela drafted a formal letter that was delivered to my parents the following day. Their response was a tearful phone call to Lisa's apartment. How could you do this to us? Mom sobbed into the phone. Sending lawyers after your own parents. I gave you multiple opportunities to make this right, I reminded her. You chose to continue taking advantage of me. We're your family, she cried. Families help each other. Help doesn't mean theft, Mom. Dad got on the line next, his tone menacing rather than pleading. If you go through with this, you're no longer our daughter. Is that what you want, to destroy your family over a house? The emotional manipulation that had worked for years no longer had the same effect. I'm not the one who destroyed this family. You did that when you stole from me, repeatedly. After hanging up, I called my Uncle Robert, my father's brother, who I hadn't spoken to in years. He and my father had a falling out long ago, and he rarely attended family functions. I'd always wondered about the rift, but had never gotten a straight answer. Uncle Robert, it's Cassandra. There was a pause before he responded. Cassandra, this is unexpected. Is everything okay? I hesitated. Not really. I'm in a difficult situation with my parents, and I was hoping to get your perspective. To my surprise, he invited me to lunch the following day. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown, and after some initial small talk, I explained the entire situation. He listened intently, occasionally nodding as if confirming something to himself. I wish I could say I'm surprised, he said when I finished. But this fits a pattern with Paul and Diane. What do you mean? Uncle Robert sighed heavily. Our falling out wasn't over a business disagreement like they probably told you. When our parents died, they left their savings to be split between us. Paul convinced me to let him invest my portion temporarily. I never saw that money again. The revelation stunned me. So, they've done this before. To multiple people, he confirmed. Your Aunt Susan's son lent them money for a down payment on a car 5 years ago. They claimed financial hardship and never repaid him. There's a reason many family members have distanced themselves over the years. This new information strengthened my resolve. I wasn't crazy or ungrateful. I was the latest victim in my parents' pattern of financial exploitation, with Jake serving as both accomplice and excuse. When I returned to Lisa's apartment, I found an official-looking envelope that had been delivered while I was out. Inside was a notice from the county tax assessor, stating that the property at my address was delinquent on property taxes for the past 2 quarters, with a warning about potential liens if not paid promptly. I immediately called the tax assessor's office to investigate. The representative confirmed that despite my providing funds specifically earmarked for property taxes, my parents had not been making the payments. Where have the tax bills been sent? I asked. They're mailed directly to the property address, she replied. though someone recently requested electronic notifications only. My mother had been intercepting my mail. I remembered the stack of official-looking envelopes I'd occasionally glimpse on their dresser, which would mysteriously disappear when I asked about them. The next shock came when I decided to check the mailbox at the house while my parents were out. Among the pile of letters was one from a real estate agency congratulating them on accepting an offer on the property. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter confirmed that they had accepted an offer of $420,000 for the house with a planned closing date just 3 weeks away. They were planning to sell the house out from under me, take the money, and disappear. A quick search on my phone confirmed my suspicions. My parents had listed the property for sale without my knowledge. The listing included professional photos of the interior, showcasing all of my renovations and furnishings as selling points. Several of the pictures even included personal items that clearly belonged to me. I immediately forwarded the information to Angela, who filed for an emergency injunction to prevent the sale of the property pending resolution of our case. "This strengthens our position considerably," she assured me. "They were attempting to profit from your investments and improvements without your knowledge or consent." The next day, I received a text from an unknown number. "This is Melissa from Sunview Realty. I'm trying to reach Paul or Diane Matthews regarding the property inspection scheduled for tomorrow. Their phones seem to be off. As their daughter can, you let them know we'll arrive at 10 a.m. They were moving forward with the sale as if the legal warning meant nothing. Further investigation revealed they had already put a deposit on a condominium in Florida. They were planning to leave Washington entirely, taking the proceeds from the house sale with them. Angela moved quickly, filing for a temporary restraining order to halt any potential sale of the property. The court granted our request, and a formal notice was served to both the real estate agency and my parents. The fallout was immediate and explosive. Mom called screaming that I had ruined their retirement plans. Dad threatened to sue me for harassment. Jake sent a series of increasingly hostile texts culminating in a disturbing message. "You'll regret this when you see what happens to your precious house." Concerned about Jake's threats, I drove by the house that evening. Jake's car was in the driveway, along with 2 others I didn't recognize. Lights blazed from every window, and loud music pulsed from inside. I decided not to confront him alone, and returned to Lisa's apartment, but the ominous feeling lingered. The next morning, Lisa accompanied me to the house. The scene that greeted us was heartbreaking. The front yard was littered with beer cans and trash. Someone had spray-painted obscenities on the garage door. Inside was even worse. Furniture had been overturned, walls had holes punched through them, and the smell of cigarettes permeated everything despite my strict no-smoking policy. In the kitchen, I found Jake, and 2 friends passed out amid the destruction. When I woke them, Jake's bloodshot eyes narrowed with malice. "Look who decided to show up," he slurred. "Little Miss Perfect, ruining everyone's lives." "You need to leave, Jake," I said firmly. "All of you." "Or what?" One of his friends stood up, moving uncomfortably close to me. "This ain't your house, lady. Your brother told us all about you." Lisa stepped forward. "I've already called the police. They'll be here any minute." It was a bluff, but it worked. The 2 friends gathered their belongings and shuffled out, muttering threats as they went. Jake remained defiant. "Mom and Dad will never forgive you," he spat. "You've destroyed this family." "I think you've done a pretty good job of that yourself," I replied, surveying the damage to my home. After Jake finally left, Lisa helped me document the destruction with photographs for both insurance purposes and our legal case. As we worked, she discovered something disturbing in the guest bathroom. "Cass, you need to see this," she called. On the bathroom mirror, someone had written in lipstick, "Next time you'll be home when we visit." Below, it was a crude drawing of a house on fire. "That's it," Lisa said firmly. "We're filing a police report and getting a restraining order against Jake, too." The officer who responded took the threat seriously, especially in light of the extensive property damage. By that afternoon, I had a temporary restraining order against Jake, preventing him from coming within 100 feet of me or the house. My parents were furious when they discovered Jake had been barred from the property. They showed up at Lisa's apartment that evening, demanding I withdraw the restraining order. "He's your brother," Mom cried. "How could you do this to him?" "He threatened me and destroyed my home," I replied calmly. "How could you defend that?" "He's going through a difficult time," Dad insisted. "You've always been jealous of the attention he gets." The absurdity of their defense of Jake's indefensible behavior was the final confirmation that nothing would ever change. They would always choose him over me, regardless of how destructive his actions or how reasonable my position. I think you should leave, I said quietly. We'll let the courts decide what happens next. As our court date approached, I was surprised by the number of family members who reached out to me privately. Apparently, my parents had been spreading their version of events throughout the extended family, painting me as mentally unstable and financially irresponsible. But as details of the legal case became known, people began to question their narrative. My Aunt Susan called to apologize. I should have seen through their excuses. They borrowed money from me last year for emergency medical bills but showed up with a new car the next month. Cousin Tara invited me to lunch. I believe you, she said simply. And you're not alone in this. Even more surprising was the call from my cousin Patrick, who I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. He had distanced himself from the family years ago, and now I understood why. They did the same thing to me, he explained. Convinced me to invest in one of Jake's business ideas, then blamed me when it failed. I lost $20,000 I'd saved for graduate school. Rather than fighting back as I was doing, Patrick had chosen to cut ties completely. It wasn't worth the emotional toll, he admitted, but I've always regretted not standing up to them. His words strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about breaking a cycle of exploitation that had hurt multiple people. During the discovery phase of our legal proceedings, an unexpected document came to light. 6 years earlier, my parents had been sued by another family member, my mother's niece Amanda, over a similar financial arrangement. The case had been settled out of court with a confidentiality agreement, which was why I'd never heard about it. Angela was able to contact Amanda's attorney, who confirmed that my parents had convinced Amanda to invest $30,000 in a guaranteed return opportunity, which turned out to be yet another of Jake's failed business ventures. This establishes a pattern of behavior, Angela explained. It strengthens our case considerably. The day before our scheduled court appearance, my parents made one last attempt to avoid legal consequences. They offered to transfer the deed to me if I would drop all claims for financial damages and sign a confidentiality agreement. They're running scared, Angela observed. They know how this looks. Should I consider their offer? I asked. That's your decision, she replied carefully. But remember, they've breached your trust repeatedly. Without accountability, what's to prevent them from doing this to someone else? I declined their offer. As painful as it was to face my parents in court, some situations required difficult choices. This was about justice not just for me, but for everyone they had taken advantage of over the years. The judge assigned to our case, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, named Judge Harriet Chen, listened carefully to both sides. My parents' attorney attempted to characterize the situation as a family misunderstanding rather than fraud, arguing that I had voluntarily helped my parents financially without a clear agreement. Angela systematically dismantled this argument, presenting the signed purchase agreement bank records, showing my consistent payments evidence of my parents' attempted sale of the property and testimonials from other family members who had experienced similar financial exploitation. The most damning evidence came from the real estate listing itself, which specifically highlighted renovations and improvements that I had paid for as selling points to potential buyers. As the proceedings continued, I noticed my father growing increasingly agitated, whispering urgently to their attorney. During a brief recess, their lawyer approached Angela with a new settlement offer. They would transfer the deed to me and pay back 20% of what I'd invested if I would agree to drop the fraud claims. They're getting desperate, Angela noted. But it's still not a fair offer given the circumstances. I rejected this proposal as well. When court resumed, Judge Chen asked if the parties had come to any agreement. When informed that we had not, she announced she would issue her ruling the following week. The waiting was excruciating, but I tried to focus on rebuilding my life regardless of the outcome. I moved back into the house, began repairs on the damage Jake had caused, and threw myself into work determined not to let the family drama derail my career any further. Melanie called me into her office to discuss the director position. Your work has improved dramatically these past couple of weeks, she observed. I'm impressed by how you've handled everything. Thank you, I said sincerely. I've learned a lot about setting boundaries and standing up for myself. She smiled. Those are essential qualities in a director. The position is yours if you want it. The promotion was bittersweet. I had achieved a professional goal while losing my family in the process. But as Lisa reminded me, they chose to treat you this way. You're just choosing not to accept it anymore. Judge Chen's ruling came exactly 1 week after our court appearance. She found in my favor on all counts, ordering my parents to either repay the full amount I had invested in the property with interest or transfer the deed to me immediately. Additionally, she granted a permanent injunction preventing them from selling the house without my consent. Most significantly, she ruled that their actions constituted civil fraud, noting the pattern of similar behavior established through testimony. This finding meant they were also responsible for my legal fees and additional punitive damages. My parents, unable to repay the nearly $300,000 now owed, had no choice but to transfer the deed to me. Within 24 hours of the ruling, I was officially the legal owner of the house I had been paying for all along. The legal victory brought a complex mix of emotions. While I felt vindicated and relieved, I also mourned the family relationships that had been irreparably damaged. My parents, facing financial and social consequences for their actions, moved into a small apartment across town. They continued to portray themselves as victims of their ungrateful daughter, but fewer people believed their story now that the facts had come to light. Jake, forced to find alternative housing due to the restraining order, moved in with a distant cousin in Portland. He sent a final text before leaving: "You've always been selfish. Hope you enjoy your empty house and your empty life." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The first few weeks in my officially owned home were strange. I reclaimed the master bedroom, replacing the mattress and bedding that had been damaged. I repainted walls, repaired holes, and gradually erased the physical evidence of the conflict. But the emotional scars would take longer to heal. I focused on rebuilding both literally and figuratively. The promotion at work provided financial stability and a new challenge to channel my energy into. I began hosting small gatherings with friends who had supported me throughout the ordeal, filling the house with laughter and positive memories to replace the painful ones. Lisa, who had been my rock, was the first to notice the change in me. "You seem lighter," she observed one evening as we shared wine on the back patio. "More confident." I considered this. "I think I finally understand my worth. Not just financially, but as a person deserving of respect and honesty." "That's a powerful lesson," she agreed. "Expensive but powerful." 3 months after the court ruling, I received an unexpected call from my Aunt Susan. "I'm having a small family dinner next weekend," she said. "Your cousin Patrick will be there. He's reconnecting with some of us after years away. I thought you might want to join." I hesitated, wary of family gatherings after everything that had happened. "Your parents won't be there," she added, sensing my concern. "Many of us have reevaluated our relationships with them since your case." The dinner was healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. Connecting with family members who acknowledged what had happened and offered genuine support helped me realize that while I had lost my parents and brother, I hadn't lost my entire family. Patrick and I bonded over our shared experiences. "I never thought anyone would stand up to them the way you did," he admitted. "It was easier to just walk away." "I almost did the same," I confessed. "But something in me couldn't let them continue their pattern." "Your courage changed things for a lot of people," he said. "You should be proud of that." 6 months after reclaiming my home, I hosted a proper housewarming party. Friends from work, supportive family members, and neighbors who had witnessed the whole saga gathered to celebrate not just my legal ownership of the house, but my emotional ownership of my life. As I looked around at the people who truly cared about me, I realized that family isn't defined by blood alone. It's built through respect, honesty, and mutual support. The people who had stood by me during the darkest period of my life had become my chosen family. The professional and personal growth continued. My promotion to director came with new responsibilities that challenged and fulfilled me. I began mentoring younger women at the company, particularly those struggling with family financial pressures or boundary issues. My experience painful as it was provided valuable insight that could help others. I also connected with local advocacy groups focused on elder financial abuse, sharing my story from the opposite perspective when parents financially abuse their adult children. The experience taught me that exploitation can occur in any relationship where there's an imbalance of power or emotional leverage. One unexpected outcome of the entire ordeal was reconnecting with my cousin Amanda, the one who had sued my parents years earlier. After hearing about my case, she reached out via email. "I've been too ashamed to tell anyone what happened," she wrote. "Everyone made me feel like I was wrong for taking legal action against family. Hearing about your case gave me validation I didn't know I needed. We met for coffee, sharing our parallel experiences and the guilt we'd both felt for standing up for ourselves. I always wondered if I overreacted, she admitted. They count on that doubt, I replied. That's how they get away with it for so long. A year after the court ruling, I received a letter from my mother. I almost didn't open it, fearing another attempt at manipulation or guilt tripping. But curiosity won out. Inside was a brief note. We're moving to Arizona next month. Your father's health isn't good. I still don't understand why you did what you did, but I hope someday you'll find it in your heart to forgive us. We do love you in our way. There was no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no apology for the years of deception, just one last attempt to place the burden of reconciliation on me. I didn't respond, but I didn't feel angry either. I simply recognized the pattern for what it was and chose not to engage. Jake eventually reached out too, though his message was less conciliatory. After losing his job in Portland, he wanted to know if he could crash at my place just until he got back on his feet. I'm sorry, but no, I replied simply. The restraining order is still in effect, and I'm not willing to welcome you back into my home after your previous behavior. His response was predictably hostile, confirming that my boundaries were necessary and appropriate. The journey taught me that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for healthy relationships. By allowing my parents and brother to take advantage of me for so long, I had enabled their behavior and contributed to my own unhappiness. The house that had been the center of so much conflict became a symbol of my independence and self-respect. Each renovation and improvement now truly reflected my taste and priorities, not compromises made to appease others. It became the home I had always wanted, filled with peace instead of tension. Most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't mean you don't love your family. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do both for yourself and for them is to break destructive patterns and insist on honesty and respect as the foundation of any relationship. True family, I discovered, supports your growth rather than exploiting your generosity. They celebrate your successes instead of resenting them. They respect your boundaries instead of treating them as obstacles to overcome. I now had the wisdom to recognize the difference and the courage to act accordingly. The price had been high, but the freedom and peace I found on the other side were worth every penny. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of your generosity? How did you balance love with self-respect in that situation? I'd love to hear your stories and perspectives in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about navigating complex family dynamics and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for themselves. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and clarity in your own relationships.